Welcome to the Newark Museum of Art's Express Yourself American Art Snapshot. My name is Ms. Fran, and I'm an educator at the museum. Express Yourself American Art is an exploration of American portraiture, sculpture, and painting, symbols and stories in American art from the 18th, 19th, and 20th centuries. Educators are invited to learn methods and skills to engage students, to take a deeper look at authentic objects, and facilitate conversations through open questioning. Discussions and activities are led by museum educators and promote higher order thinking, curriculum connection, cultural sensitivity, and art integration. During the tour, students will be observing 4 types of artworks: sculpture, painting, portrait, and teacher's choice. Throughout the program, students will compare and contrast these types of artworks while learning about the historic context of each. Students will write a narrative and have an opportunity to sketch. What is a sculpture? The art of making a 3-dimensional representation or abstract form, especially by carving stone or wood, or by casting metal or plaster. Sculpture falls into 4 distinct categories: molded, cast, carved, assembled. Within those distinctions, artists use many different materials to achieve their desired goals, each with its own significance to the artist and what they are trying to express. As with all types of art making, the artist is motivated to create art on many different levels. Art can be deeply personal, political, and/or cultural. Student questions. What other ways might you make a sculpture? What other materials might you use? Jeffrey Gibson, Come Alive, I Feel Love, 2015, 2016. Acrylic felt, rawhide, wood, glass beads, stone arrowheads, steel wire, assorted beads, tin and copper jingles, artificial sinew, acrylic paint, druzy quartz crystal, steel and brass studs. I invite you to take a moment to quietly observe the work. Observation and discussion are powerful tools that enable students to develop the skills to acquire aesthetic and language literacy. These skills aid students when sharing their interpretations of artwork to understand the world around them and to gain confidence in their own ideas while engaging in a thoughtful, respectful discussion with their peers. Before discussing each work of art, take a minute or two to slowly and quietly observe the artwork. Tell students that each piece is the artist's perspective of what they saw and felt. Ask the students to think about how the work reflects a specific time and place, and how the artist used their experiences to create that piece, and how their own experiences, perspectives, and views influence how they perceive the piece. Then ask your students to share their observations. What do you see? What more do you see? What makes you say that? Jeffrey Gibson, a Hudson, New York-based artist known for his works which combine elements of traditional Native American art with contemporary artistic references. He is a Choctaw Cherokee painter and sculptor who uses autobiographical cultural inflection. His influences range from 19th century Iroquois beadwork to contemporary street art. He says that part of his practice, quote, was a reaction to a nostalgic and romantic vision of pre-colonized Native American life, end quote. Gibson acknowledges his Native American influences and muses on their relationship to modernistic paintings and the history of geometric abstraction, which was so key in shaping his own early practice. This is another quote from Jeffrey Gibson. The way we describe identity here is so reductive. It never bleeds into seeing you as a more multifaceted person. But now, I'm finally at the point where I can feel comfortable being your introduction to American Indian culture. It's just a huge acceptance of self. Jeffrey Gibson is a sculptor, painter, and mixed media artist. His studio practice crosses many categories: indigenous, abstract, popular, and conceptual. Gibson is of Choctaw and Cherokee heritage. His works use a diverse range of materials. He often references powwow culture, contemporary pop culture, and the history of abstract art. Traditionally, the metal tube-like attachments are referred to as jingle cones or copper jingles. Native American women use these to embellish their attire, known as jingle dresses. These ornaments make a tinkling sound when they move on a dancing body. Jingle cones were originally created by using the tops of tobacco cans, and now are many produced in China. Create a sketch inspired by the piece you saw today. Remember, your sketch should be inspired by Jeffrey Gibson come alive, not duplicated. Brainstorm for 1 minute. Consider the following. What do you want your sculpture to represent? What materials might you want to use? How large would this sculpture be? How would you express your identity? Please pause the PowerPoint to facilitate sketch time.
My name is Ms. Jess, and I'm an educator at the Newark Museum of Art. What is a portrait? A painting, drawing, photograph, or engraving of a person, especially one depicting only the face or head and shoulders. Portraiture is a very old art form. Before the invention of photography, a painted, sculpted, or drawn portrait was the only way to record the appearance of someone. They tend to be artistic representations of people. They can be created in any media, from traditional oil paintings to photographs, sculpture, and even mixed media. Portraits can show part figures, usually showing the sitter's head and shoulders, but they can also depict the whole figure. Portraits can show more than one person, for example, group portraits. Portraits have always been more than just a record. They have been used to show power, importance, influence, virtue, beauty, wealth, taste, learning, or other qualities of the sitter. Another form of portraiture is known as self-portraits. These can also be photographs, paintings, sculptures, or even drawings of oneself. A self-portrait does not necessarily have to be a literal representation. It can be an abstract or symbolic depiction by an artist of themselves. Questions for students. Can you think of other famous portrait artists? Do you have a portrait of yourself? Have you taken any self-portraits? What about school pictures? Today, self-portraits are known as selfies. When was the last time you took a selfie? Portrait of the Four Youngest Children of William Rankin Sr., painted in 1838. The artist is Oliver Tarbell Eddy. Materials, oil on canvas. Take a minute to quietly observe the work. Observation and discussion are powerful tools that enable students to develop the skills to acquire aesthetic and language literacy. These skills aid students when sharing their interpretations of artwork to understand the world around them and to gain confidence in their own ideas while engaging in a thoughtful and respectful discussion with their peers. Before discussing each work of art, take a minute or two to slowly and quietly observe the artwork. Tell students that each piece is the artist's perspective of what they saw and felt. Ask the students to think about how the work reflects on a specific time and place and how the artist used their experience to create that piece, how their own experiences, perspectives, and views influence how they perceive the piece. Then ask your students to share their observations. Let's take a minute or two to observe the work and share. Pause the slideshow for 2 minutes. The art of rural America in the 18th and 19th centuries has a notably different appearance. People living in the country generally did not have access to highly trained artists, and instead commissioned portraits from self-taught artists who primarily earned their living painting furniture, carriages, and signs. The work of these self-taught artists and craftspeople often featured flattened forms, strong outlines, and irregular treatment of space and perspective. Oftentimes described as primitive and later becoming widely appreciated, what was initially perceived as a lack of training among early self-taught artists was praised by modern artists. Folk art, also known as an authentically American approach to image making, free from European influence. Questions for students. What are your observations? What do you see? What do you think these objects represent? What story do you think the artist is trying to share with us? Portrait of the Four Youngest Children of William Rankin Sr., 1838. The artist, Oliver Tarbell Eddy, was the eldest son of an inventor, printer, and engraver. Eddy delineated his subjects with tight brushstrokes and delighted in rendering clothing and furnishings. Around 1835, he moved to Newark, New Jersey. He was known to be the greatest portrait painter of the Romantic period in this area. Many of his paintings include portraits of the William Rankin family. The fascinating aspect of works from this period are the symbols that are interlaced within the paintings. Note the storm clouds, the geranium in the upper left corner, the bouquet of wilted flowers pointing downward. These are all symbols of mourning. What is mourning? The expression of deep sorrow for someone who has passed, typically involving certain conventions such as wearing black clothes. What are other conventions you see depicted in this portrait? The artist leaves us clues on how to read the painting. Matilda, who is seated and holds the flowers pointed down, refers to an innocent life cut short by illness. Also noteworthy is Matilda's gaze. She gazes to the left, whereas her siblings are gazing directly ahead towards the artist and the viewers of the painting. More than likely, paintings of family members that have passed were made up of composites of previous portraits and comparisons made to siblings. Why was this painting made? This painting was probably made to commemorate the passing of Matilda, shown seated, the youngest daughter of William Rankin. As mentioned previously, storm clouds through the window and the geranium in the upper left-hand corner are 19th century symbols of mourning. The bouquet of flowers pointed downward in Matilda's hands refers to an innocent life cut short. Why is there a hat on the table? Some scholars think that the hat represents Rankin's successful hat manufacturing business in Newark. Others believe it refers to the children growing up and going out into the threatening world of adulthood. Questions for students. What do you see? What makes you say that? What other symbols can you find? Remember, Mr. Rankin Sr. wanted to preserve the memory of his children. Write about your favorite memory. Brainstorm for 1 minute. Consider the following. What makes this your favorite memory? Who is with you? Where does it take place? What other details might you include? Take 5 minutes to write. Pause the video for 5 minutes. Thank you for joining the Newark Museum of Art today. The Newark Museum of Art is a great resource for art and artifacts from the galleries of Arts of Ancient Mediterranean, Global Arts of Africa, Global Arts of Asia, Native Artists of North America, Early America, the Gilded Age, Harlem Renaissance, and Contemporary American Art. For more information on events like Art After Dark, Camp, Community Days, Educator Evenings, please visit our website, newarkmuseumart.org. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter for more up-to-date information.